or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. Shall be tormented with fire and brimstone, in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Our hymn of praise is number 528. That's 528, a shelter in the time of storm.
The Lord's the rock, in him we hide, a shelter in the time of storm. Secure whatever may betide, a shelter in the time of storm. Mighty rock in a weary land, cool and shade on the burning sand, faithful God for the pilgrim's band, a shelter in the time of storm. A shade by day, defense by night, a shelter in the time of storm. No fear alarms, no fall of fright, a shelter in the time of storm. Mighty rock in a weary land, cool and shade on the burning sand, faithful God for the pilgrim's band, a shelter in the time of storm. The raging floods may round us beat, a shelter in the time of storm. We find in God a safe retreat, a shelter in the time of storm. Mighty rock in a weary land, cool and shade on the burning sand, faithful God for the pilgrim's band, a shelter in the time of storm. O rock divine, O refuge dear, a shelter in the time of storm. Be thou our helper ever near, a shelter in the time of storm. Mighty rock in a weary land, cool and shade on a burning sand, faithful God for the pilgrim's band, for God's a shelter in the time of storm.
Isaiah 26, verse 3, and Isaiah 48, verse 18. And it reads, Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Isaiah 48, verse 18. O that thou hast hearkened to my commandments, then had thy peace been as a river, and thy righteousness as the waves of the sea. Here endeth the reading of God's holy word.
Amen.
So we're about to pray. The altar here is always open. So if you, Holy Spirit impress you to come up front up to the altar, you can do so while the songs plays.
Disconsolate language, come to the mercy seat, fervently kneel. Here bring your wounded hearts, here tell your anguish. Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal.
O God and our Father, maker of heaven and the earth, we, your people, who you have created, come before your presence this morning on your holy Sabbath to worship you and to glorify your name. Lord, we are kneeling before you, but some of us here are not well. Some are sick, and some have other problems. But we come to worship you. And we ask, O Lord, that you may come in our midst, and that you'll touch each and every one according to their need, so they can glorify you and give you thanks for your goodness and your mercy. Those come kneeling before you at the altar, Lord, they have their various problems. They want to come close to you, Lord, and they want to feel your touch. So they come. So, Lord, you know each and every one, and you know every cell that made up their body. And the unruly one, Lord, the bad one, you can remove them and restore them again, because you are God. And Father, there are those who are at home who are sick. They cannot make it here to worship you. You know, Sister Smith is in the hospital. You know, Brother Nemard is out, but he could not make it today. Brother Randall. And we have a list here in our bulletin, Lord. There's so many names on it, but you know each and every one. We present them to you and ask that you have your own way with them, Lord. Restore them again to health according to your will, so your name will be glorified. And Father, we just thank you that you are a great God and a merciful God and a compassionate God. And you have not treated us according to our ways, but you deal with us with mercy and love. We want to present our leaders of our little congregation here, that your Holy Spirit will abide with each and every one of us, that as we lead your people, we'll not lead them astray, but we lead them to the foot of the cross. We pray also for the program of the church. And we know the health ministry and the team are working hard to present a program coming next month. We ask to be with them. And as they plan in mind that the plan is to glorify your name. We pray also for each and every members here, that your Holy Spirit will abide in each heart, and to help us to understand that we are one people, seeking to go to one place, is in your kingdom. Help us that we may help each other. Who are strong, help the weak, so they can grow in the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We want to thank you again, Father, for this, your holy Sabbath day. And we ask, Lord, that you may bless each and every word that's come from the desk today. You have put in the heart of the speaker your words to speak to us today. We ask, oh Lord, that you may give him clarity as he speak, that he may speak clearly so we may understand your words for us today. And as we listen, you may help us that we may understand, and that your words will draw us closer to you. We thank you, Lord, for your promise, the promise that you will come again to take us home, to live with you for eternity. We look forward for that day. Help us to be faithful until that time. And we ask all these mercy in the name of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
O thou who hearest every heartfelt prayer, with thy rich grace, Lord, all our hearts prepare. Thou art our light, thou art our love and light. Oh, let this Sabbath heart with thee be bright. Amen.
You know, music plays an integral part of our worship experience. And today, we have the Fosters, and they are going to come now and bless our heart with a worship and song. The Fosters.
I need the kind of love that can outlast the night. I need the kind of love that is willing to fight when the going gets gets tough and my strength's not enough, I see you showing up like never before. This battle for my heart, you took on from the start. You are the peace when my mind's at war. And oh, you will never stop fighting for me when I can't fight for myself. Every word is a promise you keep, 'cause you love me like nobody else. You stand up for me in the darkest night when my faith is weak. You're still by my side. You will never stop fighting for me. You will never stop fighting for me. In the perfect timing, you make all things right. You paint a silver lining in this heart of mine. When the going gets tough and my strength's not enough, I see you showing up like never before. This battle for my heart, you took on from the start. You are the peace when my mind's at war. And oh, you will never stop fighting for me when I can't fight for myself. Every word is a promise you keep, 'cause you love me like nobody else. You stand up for me in the darkest night when my faith is weak. You're still by my side. You will never stop fighting for me. You will never stop fighting for me. Your love is winning me over. And your heart is pulling me closer. Your love is winning me over. And your heart is pulling me closer. You will never stop fighting for me, fighting for me. Every word is a promise you keep. Oh, yeah. You will never stop fighting for me when I can't fight for myself.
When I can.
Every word is a promise you keep, 'cause you love me like nobody else. You stand up for
You
me
stand up for
in the darkest
in the
night
darkest
when my faith is
Yeah,
weak.
yeah.
You stand by my side. You will never stop fighting for me. You will never stop fighting for me.
Amen. You never stop fighting for me. Isn't that wonderful? That's the God we serve. No? It's now time for our children's corner. And the little ones, you know, they have been doing a wonderful job in aiding our church building project. And so they're going to be coming around to collect an offering. And all this goes towards our church building fund. And so we encourage you to give generously because they've been doing a good job and we're so proud of them. See those dollars
Fall. They belong to Jesus, building up his cause. Sunrise, 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 see those dollars fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause? See those little builders, let none pass by you. They are happy builders in the Master's plan. Sunrise, 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 see those dollars fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause? See those little builders, let none pass by you. They are happy builders plan. Sunrise, 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 see those dollars fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause? See those dollars drop in, watch them as they fall. They belong to Jesus, building up his cause. Sunrise, 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 see those dollars fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause? See those dollars drop in, watch them as they fall. They belong to Jesus, building up his cause. Sunrise, 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 see those dollars fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause? See those little builders, let none pass by you. They are happy builders in the Master's plan. Sunrise, 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 see those dollars fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause? See those little builders, let none pass by you. They are happy builders in the Master's plan. Sunrise, 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 see those dollars fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause?
Good morning, boys and girls. Are you tired? Let's try that again. Good morning, boys and girls.
Good morning.
Now that's better. Now, the story that I'm going to tell you this morning is called Hiding in Plain Sight. Now, does anyone know what that means, hiding in plain sight?
That you hide where someone can find you?
It means hiding where somebody won't look for you, but it's really where they should look.
Well, if you look in the dictionary, it means being unnoticeable by staying visible in a setting that it's used to being in. So, the story now is about a man that worked in a warehouse, and in this warehouse, they cut wood all day. So, now listen. At the end of every week, the man would pick up a bunch of the sawdust. He would pick up some sawdust, put it in a little box, and close the box, and then he would put that in a wheelbarrow, and he would push the wheelbarrow to the guard's gate. Now, the company that he worked for, everyone had to be checked out every evening before they went home so that they could prevent pilfering. Now, that's a big word, but I know you guys are smart, so you can tell me what pilfering means. What does that mean? Say it. Correct. So that they could prevent stealing. So he would get up to the guard's gate. The guard would say to him, "What's in that box?" And the man would say, "Just some sawdust." So of course, the guard would have to check. He'd open the box, and he would look, and it was just sawdust. So he would tell the man, "Okay, you're free to go." The man would push his wheelbarrow with the box and his sawdust out the door, and he would head home. And the man did this every week on a Friday. And finally, it came time for his retirement. So the man did his regular routine. What was his regular routine at the end of the day? Collect the sawdust, put it in a box, put the box in the wheelbarrow, and push it to the guard's gate. And the guard would then check his box. So he finally came to the guard on his last day, and the guard said, you know, all these years, I have been wondering if you've been up to something, and it's just bothering me. Would you like to tell me what you've been doing? Because I just know you've been doing something. What do you think the man told him he's been doing? Collecting sawdust? Stealing? Any other clues? The man confessed to the guard that all these years he's been stealing wheelbarrows. Now, boys and girls, can you tell me why it was so easy for him to steal the wheelbarrow?
It was so easy for him to steal it. It is because he would take the box and put the sawdust in the wheelbarrow, and then he would take it home.
Well, guess what? The wheelbarrow was such a familiar part of the factory that the guard didn't pay it any attention. It was what? Hiding in plain sight. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Is that how we are as Christians? Fitting in with our surroundings in this world so easily that we've gotten so content or used to it? Are we hiding in plain sight? Or are we going to let our lights shine so that others around us will see Jesus through us? Is that what we're going to do? Does anybody remember the story that Sister Stiles told last week? I'm not going to ask people. No one remembers the story? It was about a little girl. It was about a little girl that her name was Crystal, and she wasn't afraid to talk about Jesus. Remember in school? Yes, she stood up for Jesus each time. And that's what we all should do. We should all be like Crystal. We should not let our light just dimmer. We should let our light shine so that God can see everyone. Everyone can see God through us. Now, I want everyone to remember Matthew 5, verse 16. Does everyone know that verse? It's an easy verse in the Bible. Let your light, repeat after me. Let your light so shine before men that God may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So are we going to be hiding in plain sight? No, we're going to let our light shine, okay? Now this morning, Courtney is going to pray for us. Everyone's going to close their eyes, clasp your hands, close your eyes, and Courtney's going to pray.
Dear Jesus, thank you for helping us and learning us. Please let us don't hide in plain sight. Amen.
Amen. Okay, we're all excused. Everyone stand up, and the girls go first. Well, this time the girls are going first. That's right. Okay, now you guys can go. Tie your shoelace, Christian.
Our offertory reading is entitled Joseph's Bones. And the question is, what do Joseph's bones have to teach us? Exodus 13 and verse 19, the Bible says, and Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had placed the children of Israel under solemn oath, saying, God
nights into days, when in the darkness I would grow, faith always joys abound without a tear, though a day so bright begun, clouds may hide tomorrow's sun. There'll be a day that is always bright, a day that never yields to night, and in this light, the streets of glory I shall behold someday. I do not know how long 'twill be, or what the future holds for me, but this I know: if Jesus leads me, I shall get home someday. I do not know how long 'twill be, or what the future holds for me, but this I know: if Jesus leads me, I shall get home someday. Beams of heaven as I go through the wilderness below, guide my feet in peaceful ways, turn my midnights into days, when in the darkness I would grow. Faith always sees a star of hope, and through life
Is everybody still happy? Amen. Now it's time for the spoken word. And sitting in the speaker's chair today is none other than our first elder, Elder McIntosh. Now, there's a lot I could say about Elder Mac, but I always say he's from the old school. You know, he's been with Sunrise since its inception. So I use the word fossilized. It's been a long time. But he's a man who loves the Lord, and he loves his family also. He's a man who speaks from the heart, and he's going to tell it like it is. You know, he doesn't bite his tongue. You know, there's a little saying, he doesn't bite his tongue. He's going to say that as it is. And so I just would ask that you would whisper a prayer in your heart for him, so that as he speaks to us today, that our hearts will be melted, and that we'll have receptive hearts, so that we can absorb the word that is coming from the Lord today. But before Elder Mike comes to us, we're going to have the Fosters again. They're going to come back, and they will give us our song of meditation. And then after that, the next voice you will hear is that of Elder McIntosh.
while the
world looks upon me as I struggle alone. They say I have nothing, but they are so wrong. In my heart I'm rejoicing, how I wish they could see. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. There's a roof up above me, I've a good place to sleep. There's food on my table and shoes on my feet. You gave me a love, Lord, and a fine family. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. I know I'm not wealthy, and these clothes are not new. I don't have much money, but Lord, I have you. And to me, that's all that matters, though the world may not see. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. There's a roof up above me, have a good place to sleep. There's food on my table and shoes on my feet. You gave me a love, Lord, and a fine family. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me.
So grateful to the Fosters for their songs this morning. It's good to know that God never stops fighting for us, and His blessings are new every day. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. Elder Bailey, I'd like to thank you for the introduction. He refers to me as a fossil in sunrise. And somebody beside me says, well, is it oil or is it natural gas? Fossil fuel. But you know, I thought about something else, Brother Bailey. I thought about Ezekiel. When they threw him in a pit with dry bones. And when his body touched the dry bones came alive because of the Spirit of God in Ezekiel. And so I ask you this morning to pray for me that the Spirit of God would come on these dry bones and bring them back alive. Amen? Today we are going to be looking at the topic perfect peace. And those that I go out with know that when I'm asked to share, there are two scriptures that I always use. And I thought, why not use those two scriptures in a message to the church. And that's Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3 and 48:18, both scriptures that we used in our scripture reading today. But it seems in the world that we live, there is just so much turmoil. And there is always a search for peace. We try to make peace all over the world. But it seems to be the one thing that keeps on eluding us. We just can't find it, whether it's peace from war, peace from the things that trouble our minds. We just can't seem to find peace. I read something somewhere about the countries of the world trying to find peace or needing peace. And so, one writer did some calculation. Gustav Valbert. And in his time, he reported that from the year 496 BC to AD 1861, in 3,358 years, there were 227 years of peace and 3,130 years of war. And if you did the mathematics and should come up with a ratio, it would be 13 years of war to 1 year of peace. He went on to add that within the last 3 centuries, and he was writing in the 1800s, from the year 1500 BC to 1860. No, within the last 3 centuries, there have been 286 wars in Europe. In 300 years, there were 286 wars in Europe. He also added that from the year 1500 BC to AD 1860, more than 800 treaties of peace meant to remain in force forever were concluded. The average time they remained in force was 2 years. Think about it. It seems as if peace is something we'll never have on this earth. Not only do our countries need peace, but our families need peace. Amen. I think most times the real battlefield is in the home. 4-year-old girl went to school. She was told the story of Snow White for the first time. And so she could hardly wait to go home to share the story with her mother. And so with the excitement of a 4-year-old, she went home and she retold the fairy tale. And remember, this is a fairy tale. Most of us have read the story of Snow White. she retold the fairy tale to her mother that afternoon. After relating how Prince Charming had come in on his beautiful horse and kissed Snow White back to life, she asked her mother loudly, "And do you know what happened then?" "Yes," said her mommy. "They lived happily ever after." And Susie looked at her mother with a frown on her face, and she said, "No, they got married." But isn't that how it is with us? There are no fairy tale marriages. It seems as if most of us are content with sham marriages, Brother Bailey. We put the best on the outside when we come to church. We put the best out when people come to visit. No one knows of the wars that are being fought in our homes. Then we come down to our church. It seems that even in church, we can't find peace. Even in church, peace eludes us. It seems as if those who have the greatest need for peace are those in whose hearts the peace of God should be found. So it seems we cannot be peacemakers until we ourselves have realized the peace of God in our own hearts. But Isaiah chapter 26 and verse 3 has a big promise. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace. The promise, the assurance comes before the conditions. I thank God for his goodness, because his promises are sure. He gives us the assurance before he places on us the requirements for that to be realized. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. We can look at this peace in several ways. Number one, God's peace is perfect in its character. The character of God's peace is that it is able to get the job done. And we see that as we look at Jesus on the stormy sea, resting in the bottom of the boat, not worried about all that is happening around him. But the disciples are troubled. And In the turbulence of the moment, they went to him. How can you sleep? How can you sleep when the sea is raging and our lives are in danger? And Jesus simply said to the storm, "Peace, be still." And the waters were calmed. Peace, be still. God's peace is not necessarily the removal of our troubles. So often I hear people say to me, "If only so and so would happen, I would be good." You ever heard that? Have you ever said that? Have you ever felt that? If only I had a job. If only I had a better job. If only my friend or my husband wouldn't talk to me certain ways, then everything would be good. If my children would come to church, then everything would be good. You see, we put the conditions ahead of the promise. That's what we do. That's not what God does. Because God's peace is ours in spite of what is going on around us. God's presence in our hearts brings peace to our lives. And so even in the midst of sorrow, even in the midst of sickness, even in the midst of sadness, even in the midst of death, even in the midst of all the turmoil in this world, we can have peace. Seems sometimes, even in my personal life, it seems to take a lot of trouble, deep despair. Seems that it has to get to the place where I see no place out, that I put it all together and take it to God. You know, God is so good. In spite of the fact that I didn't see him all the time, that things seemed to be good. In spite of the fact that I didn't remember him when the conditions that I have placed on my peace were right. Now that the conditions that I needed to feel good are no longer there, I'm coming to him. Isn't that how we are? Isn't that how we are? But his peace, his assurance, his love, his care is always there, because it comes before the conditions that he sets. Second thing is that God's peace is perfect in its completeness. It doesn't matter how much we need. God's love, God's peace is always as much as we need. It will not run out. That's why Isaiah says in 48 and verse 18, "Oh, that thou hadst hearkened unto my commandments, and had thy peace been as a river, and thy righteousness as the waves of the sea." Will never run out. I think of some of our missionaries. I even think of the apostles. We look at Paul. We look at all that he went through. And God was always there to give him peace. Have you ever thought about it? All that he went through, he was still at peace. Nothing to worry about, even when he was in jail ready to be killed. That is the peace of God. I was watching Hope Channel this past week, and I saw the story of an orphanage in Costa Rica. But it wasn't an orphanage for children. It was an orphanage for stray dogs. And they could have at any given time 800 to 1,600 dogs, I think, the person related. But they knew every one of those dogs. Guy said they take them for a walk every day. And all they had to do is get up and say, "Come." And they showed them taking the dogs on a walk. And all the dogs were there, happy, running, without a care in the world. And I thought about all of those dogs, and that these guys knew all the dogs that were under their care. If one was missing, they knew. And I thought about it. And then I thought about God's love and his care. He knows each one of us by name. He knows every hair on my head. And you think about that kind of love, that kind of caring. He knows me. He knows my needs. And he is able to meet them. I am far greater than the sparrow. I am more than these dogs. My God knows me. And my God can take care of all my needs. Isn't that enough for me to praise him? Isn't that enough for me not to worry when things get rough? Listen to the story told by Elder Graham last week, and I thought to myself, that pastor in that prison knew what it was to have peace in spite of. In prison and being deliberately starved for his belief. But God used the warden's cat to feed him every day. Thought about it. And I said, isn't God wonderful? Brothers and sisters, I realized that God used that cat. I'll tell you something. Most of you here know that I can't swim. Can't make a stroke to save my life. I was home almost 3 weeks ago. I was cutting my lawn, and so I went out to the side of the canal. There's a fence at the back of the house, and I have probably about 2 or 3 feet outside the canal. And I hadn't cut out there for months, and it was looking real bad. And so I went out there with my weed whacker, and I was chopping down the vegetation growing on the canal bank. Well, I'll tell you something. Where I live, there is a lot of coral rock. If you dig 6 inches, you're going to hit coral stones. And so the way the canal is dug, it's dug straight down. The banks are as sheer as this wall that you're sitting beside, Brother Mac. And it drops straight down 15 feet. And so I'm out there cutting the vegetation. I walked under some coconut and banana boughs. And then something hit me in my head, but not just 1 or 2. Wasps were in my head. I dropped the weed whacker and started to run. But that's as far as I remember. I didn't get far. What I do realize is that after I came to and retrieved the weed whacker, I was wet all the way up to my waist. I had fallen in the canal. My knees were damaged. They're still damaged. My wrists were hurt. Nothing else happened anywhere else on my body. My legs went down into the water right to my waist. It's a sheer drop. I went by the fence. And I gave God thanks. Because you know, brothers and sisters, sometimes we don't realize the things that God does for us. That had to be my guardian angel that held me from going down. I went that sheer drop, I went down in that only to my waist. God saved me. And I can tell you today, brothers and sisters, it's good to serve the Lord. Peace is produced by the Spirit of God. Galatians 5 and verse 22 says, but the fruit of the Spirit is joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith. And so I know that if I'm in tune with Jesus, He produces fruit in my life. And one of these fruit is peace. I want to say to us today, you see a Christian who is always in turmoil. I'll show you a Christian who is always out of tune with God. Have you been or ever been like me in a situation that you thought you were about to die? Have you ever been there? I'm going to die for certain. Huh? You ever been there? I'll tell you the story of a missionary. He was in a plane that was circling over a city. The plane couldn't land because of low visibility. That was before the times when you had autopilot. And most of us, when we are on a plane and we have a smooth landing, we cheer the pilots. But you know, today, most times, the plane lands, the pilot has nothing to do with it. He puts it on autopilot, and that takes him down onto the runway. Most times, you have a poor landing. It's some malfunction or some other error, maybe from the tower. But this plane couldn't land because of poor visibility. And so it was circling around, letting off fuel. You might have seen in the news the other day some school had complaint because the plane let off fuel over the school. And apparently it got on some of the children. But this plane was letting off fuel because it couldn't land. And so this missionary decided that since we have a little time up here in the air, I'm going to prepare my last will and testament. And when he concluded that, he wrote the lines, "There is peace, perfect peace." Now he's about to die. "Life with Christ is the way to live. In this hour, when I'm about to die, there is assurance. There is God underneath all the uncertainties of human existence. So I rest in God." You go back to your experience. Those times you thought you were going to die. What did you think about? What did you worry about? Where was your focus? Think about it. Third thing about peace. This peace is produced by the scriptures. Psalm 119 and verse 165 says, "Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them." And what this is really saying is that nothing can cause them to lose their calm, to lose their peace. Let me ask you a question this morning. How easy do you lose your peace? And when I say that, how easy do you lose your cool? And some of you will tell me it depends on what happens. Huh? And most of us will tell me that. Yes. It depends on what happens, and that's the truth. We allow conditions to dictate who we are. For those fully surrendered to the will of God, allows the Spirit to dictate how they behave under the conditions. People often ask me, you don't lose your cool very easily. And I have a way to tell people when they think somebody has offended me, that I'm giving them rope to hang themselves. That might not be the best approach, but I'm giving them rope to hang themselves. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm not going to lose sleep over situations that I have no control over. I lose my job, I lost my job. But hey, I still have life. I still have energy. I still have my skills. And God always sees that the mortgage is paid. He always sees that there is food on the table. My God always provides. So I shouldn't allow things to dictate how I live, how I behave. Hey, this man lost his job and he can't find one. Don't worry about it, lady. Don't worry about it. Don't get so uptight that you want a divorce because he isn't making the contributions that you think he should make. Put it to God. Ask God to give him a job. And when the time is right, when your need is there, that you're going to go under, God will make a way out.
Amen.
You know, if we're going to find peace in God's words, we must study his word. Yeah. We can't be like the lady, Brother Lewis. Carl Porter came to her door and he was selling books, and he said to her, "Do you own a copy of the Bible?" And she says, "I certainly do." All right. And he said to her next, "Do you read it regularly?" And she replied, "Oh yes, I certainly do." And then she sent her little daughter to go get her Bible from the drawer of the desk. And so the little girl brought the Bible, and as she was flipping through the pages, her glasses fell out. And she says, "Oh my Lord, this is where it is," without thinking. "I've been looking for it for the past 3 years." This peace is produced by our submission. Leviticus 26 and verse 3. "If you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and do them." You go on to verse 6. "And I will give peace in the land, and ye shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid. And I will rid evil beasts out of the land. Neither shall the sword go through your land." God gives us the assurance, don't worry, I will give you peace. But there's one little word there. If. If. And so here we have a condition. Isaiah 48 and verse 18, if I should paraphrase it, it says, "Oh, that thou hadst hearkened unto my commandment, then had thy peace been as a river, and thy righteousness as the waves of the sea." And if I should paraphrase that, it would say something like this: if you keep my commandments, then your peace would continue to flow like a river, and your righteousness would be never ending like the waves of the sea. You know, our churches, I believe, are not the kinds of churches, Pastor, that God would have them to be. Because we have disobeyed him. And because of our disobedience, we don't see this perfect peace in our members. If you had done my commandments, then your peace would be ever flowing like a river. And your righteousness like the waves of the sea, never ending. A little girl was playing in the yard, and her mommy asked her to come help with the dishes. But the little girl continued to play. The mother called to her several times to come help with the dishes, but the little girl kept on ignoring her. And finally the mother said to the child, "Didn't you hear me? I said, come help with the dishes." And if it was when I was growing up, I wouldn't hear this part of the question. I would have felt something. Didn't you hear me calling you to come help with the dishes? To which the little girl replied, "Oh yes, I heard you. I'm just not doing what you said." We shake our heads, but let me ask a question. How many times do we treat God this way? Think about it. How many times do we treat God this way? We hear him loud and clear, but we just won't do what he tells us to do. Man who is at peace will always give praise to God. Philippians 4 and verse 4, the Apostle Paul says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice." And think about it. These words came from the lips of a man in jail. Not knowing whether he would die or be set free. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say, rejoice. There is also peace or prayer involved in peace. Philippians 4:6. Be careful for nothing, But in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. What Paul is saying, don't worry about anything. Don't be pulled apart by the things of this world. You know, I think about it and I sometimes laugh at the things that unravel us. I'm going to tell you something. I've been through it. A number of years ago, I didn't know it was in me. But I was in a situation, and I thank God for His mercies. I don't know, it's many years ago. I had been a Christian for a while, and I thought I was doing good. I thought I was doing good. But I found myself in a situation where I was being bothered. I was being poked on every side. And it was the law that was poking me. And I just thought the policeman was being unfair. And what came from my mouth to him, I would not repeat from the pulpit. What am I saying? What am I saying? My focus was not on God. Remember, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. My mind wasn't on God. I wasn't trusting in him. And so what happened? I lost his peace and I fell into sin. Now it's all on me. Listen, that was all on me. God had plainly put the conditions in place. His peace was there. It's always there. He doesn't take it away. We put it from us. We put him from us. And so we lose his peace and we fall into sin. Read another story. And I'm telling stories today. There was a certain man in the court of Alexander the Great, and Alexander told him, listen, anything at all that you need, I will give it to you. And so the man had some financial needs, and Alexander, the story says, sent him to the treasurer. You know, that would probably be what we would call the secretary of the treasurer or the minister of finance. And the man took the note that says, give him whatever he wants. And the man asked for something that in those days would be the equivalent of maybe $50,000. And I should have done the calculations, but I would figure that would be in the tens of millions of dollars today. And the treasurer looked and said, this man can't be in his right mind. And so he sent to the emperor and said, this man is requesting an outlandish amount from the treasury, I can't see how he could be so unreasonable. And so he refused to give the man the money, but Alexander sent back a message: pay the man at once. This man has done me a singular honor. By the largeness of his request, he shows that he understands both my wealth and my generosity. What are we saying today? God has peace unending for us. God's righteousness has no limit. Amen. And he offers this to us. And it's up to us how much of it we claim. We must, brothers and sisters, be willing to do the will of God. Now I'm going to just share one little thing with us and then I'm done. I like to read the stories of the martyrs. I don't know about you, but I like to read the stories of the martyrs. In 1555, one of the martyrs, Nicholas Ridley, was burned at the stake. I was told that on the day that Ridley was supposed to be burnt at the stake, they tied around his neck a bag of gunpowder. They put him above the fire on a slow roast, which meant that he wouldn't die quickly. But the story goes that the night before his execution, his brother offered to remain with him in the prison, to offer him some assistance and comfort. Ridley declined the offer. And replied that he meant to go to bed and sleep as quietly as ever he did in his life, because he knew the peace of God. He knew the peace of God. He could rest in the strength of the everlasting arms and trust in Jesus to meet his need. Brothers and sisters, so can we. The trials of life, the storms of life, the tempests may blow. We may lose everything. We may find ourselves in a situation that we can see no way out. But our God is in control of everything. You might have compromised in the past, but be reassured that God can make a way where there is no way. And even if he chooses not to save us here, remember, There is an eternity that awaits the faithful. And so let us leave here today with the assurance that He will keep us in perfect peace if our minds are stayed on Him, because we trust in Him. May God help us to find this peace as we put our trust in Him.
Amen, church. Our closing hymn is hymn number 530 as we stand, "It is Well with My Soul."
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my Lord thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. I sing, oh, the joy of this glorious thought. My sin not in part, but the whole is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when my faith shall be sight. The clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my
For the benediction. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. And may the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, and may he grant us his peace. Peace in our hearts, peace in our homes, but most of all, peace with the Prince of Peace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please be seated.